So thank you everybody for joining us again. My name is Jonathan Montoya. I am here today with a couple of my really good friends, Dr. Kimberly Singh and Dr. Noor Abushi, which are two wonderful world-class board-certified plastic surgeons. That is the guest that I have today, but we thought as a group of the Panacea family, the Panacea platform would be useful to bring some experts on to help us deal with this unique time that we have and this unique experience that we're all experiencing together with the coronavirus. So we've decided to bring on Liza Reed, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist, also a licensed professional counselor. She has advanced training in a bunch of different acronyms that I don't even know what they are: EFT, DBT, PE, ERP. So it sounds like you have a lot of training in this type of stuff. And it sounds like you've done a lot of work with anxiety and depression and those types of things. So that's kind of where I want to jump off, is kind of the anxiety component of this, because I think there's a lot of people out there, and including myself, that have a lot of anxiety about what's happening. And we thought it would be useful to speak with someone that kind of works in this situation about maybe how to deal with this in a more healthy way.
Liza, let me start off by telling you my anxieties, and I guess you can probably give me all the therapy that I need. And I'll tell you, it has been multifaceted. We have not experienced anything like this in my lifetime. And as a father, I've been anxious about my kids, my family. My wife feels the same way. The added anxiety of being a business owner as well, and everything that I need to be thinking about as far as my employees and my community. And as a physician, I'm also very anxious about all the care that I need to give to my patients, the ones that I already have and the ones that are also in my community, which is a big part of my life. Mm-hmm. So my anxiety is multifaceted. I wake up every morning thinking about all these different things, and I try to deal with these different anxieties. What are different things or tools that I can be thinking about, or how can I manage my anxieties a little bit better in these hard times?
Sure. And I think you are speaking to the global experience that everyone is having. And I think there's slightly different ways that we deal with anxiety on whether the anxiety fits the facts of the situation or not, right? And this is a situation where anxiety fits the facts, right? This is really scary. There is so much uncertainty, which is really, honestly, the breeding ground for any sort of anxiety or stress response is uncertainty. So I think before even talking about ways we can manage it, I think we first need to look at why the anxiety makes sense and kind of where the anxiety gets it wrong, right? Because if we look at where anxiety comes from, right? So it comes from the emotional part of the brain, the amygdala, which is the oldest, most kind of antiquated part of our brain, right? So there've been a lot of upgrades done to our brain evolution-wise, but that is not one of them. So it is very antiquated as far as how it sends us signals. So one of the antiquated ways that it sends us signals is that it has us kind of jump to action when it hasn't necessarily been able to work through whether the disaster is within our range. So there's kind of a disturbing story that sometimes we tell in session to kind of display how anxiety does this. So if we were all sitting in a room together and a man came running in and said, "Oh my gosh, you have to come with me. There is a baby choking," right? What's going to happen to our bodies, right? So our amygdala that's been around forever is going to start sending these signals and calling us to action, right? It's going to increase our heart rate. We're going to feel it in our stomach. We're going to start breathing faster. Our pupils are going to dilate. We're going to be called to action. So what are you going to do? Unless you are totally apathetic, you're going to get up and you're going to try to take action and run out of the room, right? So then what happens if you get out of the room and the guy goes, "Well, actually the baby's in Nebraska," right? So all of a sudden, our bodies are ready to go. We have been totally primed, and yet the actual disaster or what we need to tend to is out of our range. So then we're left with all of this happening in our body, and our thoughts become very simplistic when we're in fight or flight, right? Our cognitions become very simplistic and the complexity goes down. So now we're reacting to this emergency that is not there. So don't get me wrong. I am not saying that this is not an emergency and that there isn't actually something happening, right? This baby in Nebraska actually is in distress, and there are things we can do. But we have to be able to get kind of our prefrontal cortex and the part of our thinking brain in line so that we can actually look at what we can do in that moment, because it may not be a lot, right? If that baby is in Nebraska, there's only a few certain things that we can do. So the question becomes, what is it that needs to be done in this moment by me, right? Because we can't just go running around, flying to Nebraska, resuscitating babies and things like that. We have to be able to say, okay, what is it right now in this moment that I have control over? What is within my range, right? So I think what has become problematic for a lot of people is we're inundated with messages and all sorts of scary things that are happening right now. And some of them are completely out of our range, right? And some of them are not actually happening to us, but it feels like they're happening to us, right? Because we're kind of now, our sympathetic brain, our nervous system is on high alert. So the question that I think people need to be walking around and asking themselves is, what is it that needs to be done right now by me, right? Because there is a lot that needs to be done. But what needs to be done right now by me? And so I have actually found that this almost becomes a sort of calming mantra, because a lot of times it's very simple, right? The thing that needs to be done right now by me might be that I need to go and sit with my son and help him get online for classes. Or it might be there's actually nothing that needs to be done right now by me. So just going back to that of kind of being able to gauge what is actually within my range, what do I have control over? I think the second component is that because when we're in this emotion mind, as we would call it, our thinking brain is not actually online. Again, this is part of it being kind of one of the more current upgrades of our brain, is that it's not communicating very well back to the amygdala, back to the emotional brain. And the fastest way that we can kind of communicate to the emotional brain is through our body. Our breath sends signals to our brain quicker than anything that tells our brain whether we're in danger or tells our brain whether we are at ease, whether we can be calm. So as popular as it's become to talk about mindfulness and meditation, it's popular for a reason, right? Because it's rooted in physiologically, it is the quickest way to kind of, to get our brain back online, that thinking brain back online, and for us to be more accurate, for us to really be able to see, okay, what is it that needs to be done right now by me? Otherwise, we're really all right now walking around feeling like we've got to resuscitate all of these babies, and half of them are in Nebraska, right? So we've got to get our bodies calm to signal to our brain, right, that we are okay. We are not in imminent danger in this moment. Again, I am not saying that there are not very real things happening to people that we have to tend to. But the problem is when we are kind of in this emotion mind, we're just like chickens with heads cut off. We're just trying to tend to all of it. And it's actually proliferating our anxiety.
So do you recommend specific thing? I know, I mean, I've looked into the world of mindfulness and meditation. Haven't really gotten around to it. But do you recommend certain things to do in these situations? Like if you feel yourself freaking out, I mean, is there exercises, or like, what do you recommend?
Does Botox help? Because that would be an amazing marketing.
Yes, it would. You can at least look like you are calm,
That's right?
That's the first step. Absolutely. And you don't have to, you don't have to start up a meditation practice. If this is the time that you want to do that, then that's wonderful, right? But really, it is more a way of being able to sit with and stop for a moment and see what is actually happening, right? So being able to sit, get quiet for a moment, and listen to the sounds around you, right? Listen to your thoughts going through your brain without attaching to them, without going, okay, I've got to hold on to that thought and I've got to do something about it right now, right? But just kind of sitting with where you're at and what's actually happening. Because when we slow down and start breathing, then we might realize, like, okay, right now, everybody in my house is healthy, right? Or right now, what I need to be doing is just getting a meal to my parents, whatever it might be. So it doesn't have to be, mindfulness is really the act of being in the present moment on purpose without judgment, right? So you're not adding anything to this moment. You're not making interpretations. You are just with the exact moment you're in on purpose and noticing it without trying to change it, without trying to push it away or to hold on to it. So it's a very simple practice, but it's not easy. Otherwise, we would all be doing it. And so I would be happy to recommend specific books. It kind of depends on how you learn best. You know, there are a million great apps to help with mindfulness. And mindfulness can be, honestly, every time that you go into the bathroom, something we all do, right? Take that opportunity to just put your hand on your belly, right? And feel your breath. Notice the thoughts going through your head, right? Letting your shoulders drop, using your body really to send the signal to your brain of like, in this moment, right now, I'm okay. And again, so you can go anywhere from just taking a moment to pause and breathe, right? All the way into a more structured meditation practice where you're actually sitting there for 20 minutes. And again, Headspace is amazing. Insight Timer is a great app. It's free. There's also Calm. Those are probably the three most popular. And there's about 1 million books on the same thing. But I think we don't even need to overthink it right now, because the last thing we need is a new kind of structure that we have to put into our daily life. So my suggestion is pausing, right? Letting your shoulders relax, letting the breath go in and out. Make sure you're doing it from your belly with your nose, long, slow exhales. And just remembering, okay, there's nothing that needs to be done right now by me.
Shout out to Headspace, by the way. So they've, Liza actually sent it to me. They've launched this thing for the rest of 2020. They're giving free access to their app and their premium accounts or whatever it is to all doctors, all healthcare professionals across the United States. So all you need to do is be a doctor or a professional, or I'm assuming nurses as well, or anyone who has an NPI.
That's right.
Yeah, so anyone who has an NPI, essentially, as a professional, you can access it for free until the end of this year.
That's awesome. Liza, thank you so much. That's really good advice. My question for you is twofold. I'd like to know your thoughts about, you know, as a mother of two kids who are online learning, you know, which on some level is great because it provides a little bit of structure. I think most of our kids, especially mine, are, you know, like most of ours are very busy and structured, and sort of their days are, you know, maybe in a bad way, but from, you know, one thing to the next. And I think this time has lent itself to in exercise as a parent as sort of how do I best organize their day? Or is it good to just kind of let them have, a little more lack of structure and use that as a time for them to just effervesce in whatever way that they're all also coping with these changes? So I'd love any insight that you have on that.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think that that's a really important question. And everything that I've read, is along the spectrum of some people will say, hey, keep them in routine as much as possible, things kind of steady, all the way to, let them sleep. What are they really going to be retaining at this point? And I think I tend to be someone who sees both of those aspects to be true. And I think it's number one, kind of knowing your child. So I have one child that it really actually creates a lot of anxiety for him when routine is gone, or when there's a transition or a change, right? That in and of itself creates anxiety for him. So for him specifically, it has been, let's keep it as similar as possible, right? This is the time you're going to wake up, you're going to get up, get dressed as if you're going to school. And that has kind of eased his mind, right? It has sent the message of like, things are okay. I am in my routine. I know what to expect. For my other two, that's not the case. That actually trying to keep this routine that doesn't feel like their old routine, feels like implementing a whole new system, which has created anxiety for them. So with them, I've noticed that kind of allowing them to flow, and now they're older, but allowing them to flow with more of, it's more laid back, right? They're both in their pajamas. They're both kind of half laying on the couch while they're doing it, has served to decrease their anxiety. So I feel like at the end of the day, that if anything you're implementing feels like you are having to, you're beating your head against the wall, then again, we're kind of proliferating more of a pandemic of stress and anxiety, if anything. And so kind of giving ourselves collectively some permission of, this is going to be messy and we might really mess it up. And kind of allowing it to happen and see how it goes, because in really trusting our insight as far as being a parent, that we can always pivot. If we start noticing, okay, this is really increasing their anxiety, pivoting and going, okay, I'm going to try and just see how it goes when I let them log off for a few hours during the day, or whatever it might be. But it's really an opportunity, I think, for us as parents to get back to feeling that confidence in parenting, that we do know what we're doing, right? And we do have their best interest in mind, and we're going to listen. And as soon as we hear something that we need to change, we'll change it. You'll know if you have a child that really has a lot of anxiety in transitions or with change and needs structure, and you'll know if you have a child that really needs to kind of find their way through this. Do you feel like that's the case for you?
Me, I also have, I have a 5-year-old and I have a 13-year-old. So they're on super different sort of, worlds. And interestingly, and I've, number of mom friends I've talked to, like my 5-year-old seems pretty unfazed by what's going on, so far. I think he's young enough that it hasn't really hit him. And as the weeks go on, that may obviously change. But for now, he thinks it's sort of cool that we get to wake up and be together. I'm usually working a lot and I'm home a lot now. So from his perspective, I think he thinks it's sort of a novelty so far. So we're going with that. My 13-year-old, like, he's ready to play soccer again. He's ready to see his friends. I think, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm really thankful for technology right now. I think the ability to be able, for him and even my 5-year-old FaceTiming with his friends, it's really comforting, I think, for them to be able to see their friends and to sort of know that this is still their world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, I've also found it to be somewhat of a struggle for my older two, that how do I give them information where I am kind of asking them to take it seriously and to see what's happening in an accurate lens, right? Without, without injecting a whole lot of fear. So that's been kind of an interesting balance as well of how do I, give them accurate information without scaring them. And I think, that's what we're all in essence trying to balance for ourselves too. And so I've been trying to be very conscious and very mindful of just, again, kind of checking with my body and noticing, if I've been listening to the news for an hour and a half, checking in with my body, like what's actually happening. Most of the time, my shoulders are up here, I'm breathing shallow. So just being able to notice that too, of when it goes beyond just accurate information into just increasing our fear.
Right.
Do you feel like we're doing permanent damage to our kids right now?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I really don't. I think that it is always a benefit for our kids to see that that the world has adversity, and it's always a benefit for them to see us, in a very intentional way, muddling through and trying to adjust. I think it's very validating for them to see that we don't know what we're doing and that we're up against something that we don't have past experience in. It's pretty much how they feel as kids on a daily basis, right? Just going through things in the first time. And so I think it's an opportunity to show them that we can make mistakes. We can be intentional about this. We can, we can really choose kind of how we respond to this. And I don't mean to add pressure of we've now got to make this some beautiful learning experience. And really, what else can we do with it?
No, I felt that way a little bit during this entire time, is that, they're starting to get things pulled from them, right? You're not able to go here. You're not able to do that. And you're not able to get this, and you're not able to get that. And in some ways that's been a little refreshing. I don't know. Maybe it's just because of the access that our kids have these days, but I don't know. It feels what's the word I want? I guess there's a sense of reality that this is brought to the family. So I don't know.
Yeah, and I think,
I think
sorry, go ahead.
A really good way to look at it. I feel the same way. I feel like on some level it's, this is like the most time we've all spent together as a family in so long. And in so many ways, that's so refreshing. And we always, not that we want it this way, but, we're always sort of like, oh, I wish I just had more time. And I think if we can, on a personal level, I would say if I can just get over sometimes my own anxieties and really just cherish what this is, I would definitely be doing, that would be a good day.
I think for me, oh, sorry.
Nope, sorry, go ahead, Nora.
I think for me, I think the thing that I struggle with is, and I do it unintentionally, is the level of anxiety that I portray in front of them and how much I'm trying to shield them away from the anxiety that I'm feeling. And I think it's great, to spend time with them, and it's great to, to kind of pivot into a better place that we're in right now, or I don't know, I guess change the rhetoric at home when we're together. But part of it is I am on a person level anxious, and the idea is how can I deal with my anxieties to not make it, I guess, not make them feel it as much, but at the same time, is there a benefit for them to see some sort of anxiety and how we deal with it as adults? And I think that's the balance that I try to struggle with, is how true should I be about my personal anxieties in front of my kids in a certain situation?
I think that's a beautiful question. I think we don't, we're coming from good intentions, but we don't give our kids the benefit of the doubt, right? That I think we've gotten societally in this pattern of really, well, not even societally, it is human nature, right? We want to take adversity away from our kids. We want them to feel better. We don't want them to suffer and be in pain, right? And so I think we're very programmed to want to do that. But they're smart. They're going to pick up on it. They're going to know that you're anxious, right? And I think something that can be more detrimental to kids is when they can feel something and pick up on it, you know, like, oh, dad's anxious. And then they hear, no, I'm fine, everything's okay, right? Because then all of a sudden they're going, wait, my gut said that, you know, something was going on, but he's telling me he's fine, right? And yet, at the same time, what we don't want to do is go like, the world's ending, I'm so anxious, right? So for me, the middle ground is being able to actually kind of soothe them. It's very soothing for kids to hear that their gut was right, you know, to soothe them and say, yeah, I'm anxious. You know, this makes me nervous. I've never been through this before. And it actually is a way that they can then emotionally regulate. Okay, I thought something, I could tell that dad was anxious and he told me that he was, right? And it's also very validating as far as they've got their own, they're getting different information and probably not all accurate information about what's happening. And so they've probably got their own fears, whether they're justified or not. And so we always think, oh, we've got to be strong for our kids. We don't want them to be afraid, so we've got to stay kind of stoic. And yet, most of the time, I'd say the majority of the time, that what's really calming for them is hearing like, okay, that what I'm feeling makes sense. I'm feeling anxious right now. Dad said that he's feeling anxious, so this makes sense. So again, you're not upping the ante and going, okay, we all have to go hide underground. But you are just saying, yeah, your anxiety or fear around this makes total sense. And I've got that too. So if you notice that I'm a little short with you, or if you notice that I'm, you know, on the phone more or pacing or whatever it might look like, that's why, you know, you're right. I'm feeling a little nervous. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So I want to go back to the first thing you said, whereas what's in my range.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I feel like I should be a little anxious given the situation.
Yep.
Okay. But where my throttle, I think I'm one of the more anxious people that I know. I just have that in me. I'm wired that way. So there's really not a whole lot in my range that I can deal with, other than, you know, a certain handful of things. So how am I supposed to monitor that? Because right now it feels like I want more stuff to be in my range. That makes sense. Like I want to be able to control more, but I can't. So how would you walk me through that anxiety? Because I feel like I want to control more, I can't control it, and that's causing a ton of anxiety right now.
Well, look, Jonathan, you just did the first thing. You just acknowledged, right? Oh. Don't they say that that's the first thing, like acknowledging? Yeah. No, I really think that, and this is hard for me to say because I like to control things, and I like to do, and I like a fast pace. So it really is kind of a conscious decision I am going to slow down, and I'm going to ask, you know, am I doing this out of some frantic desire to have the illusion of control, right? Which is probably actually going to just continue the cycle of anxiety. Or do I actually need something else right now, right? So I think the first step is deciding, is there anything that needs to be done right now by me? And if the answer is legitimately yes, then by all means do it, right? Now, if you're answering yes to that question all day long, right, then my guess is your thinking brain is probably just misfiring, right? Because what happens is that we get more hyper aware of our bodily sensations, of all the news. We just get more aware and we get hyper vigilant, right? So keep in mind that you might be more often than not saying, okay, yes, there is something I need to do. So ask yourself again, like, do I really need to do this? Or is this the time I need to just sit I need to have a glass of water. I need to make a good meal for my family. And so, you know,
water.
Drink water, right?
Water.
Yes.
I thought you were going to say another substance.
Right. That creates a whole other problem, right? When this is done, then we're all going to be going to rehab.
I'm done for.
Right.
Okay. So, all right. I hear what you're saying, though. So just if I feel myself overreacting, I need to be conscious of that and make sure that it's actually something I need to be doing. That's what you're saying.
And I would say be careful too that you're not judging yourself for that response, right? Because again, it is a response that makes sense. It is a human response that we cannot control, and it does fit the facts of the situation, right? So we also, though, once we recognize that that's what's happening, that our cognitions are more simplistic and less complex, that we are more kind of black and white, right or wrong, then we have control over how we respond, right? Okay, of going, okay, my amygdala is on fire right now. I need to calm that down, right? And the fastest way is always through the body, right? So paying attention, what's my breath doing? What's my body doing? Am I holding tension? And then relaxing that. And for some people, they do that in yoga. For some people, they do it in running. For some people, it is just imagery of imagining your body relaxing, or progressive muscle relaxation, however it works for you to kind of just tune in of what's happening in my body.
Yeah. So you are. So I think Dr. Singh and I were both discussing this when we first came on. It feels better if you can get outside and do something. And again, I'm using that loosely, outside, but just get some physical activity out there. Is that a way of doing that? A way of?
Yeah. And I would say, you know, for right now we have, you know, we are talking about it. So we've got this opportunity of, you know, I would encourage you when you get out there not to kind of frantically try not to think about these things, because first of all, that won't work. It's the old joke of like, try not to think about a pink elephant, right? It's the first thought that pops into your head is a pink elephant. So not going out there if I've got to run away from this or get away from it. But more, I want to get back in touch with my body, the thing that I can control, right? And really slow myself down. And sometimes we slow ourselves down by just keeping active, but really holding on to that, that quality of wanting to tune back in and control what we can, right? The things that are within our range.
One thing that that I've been doing with my friends, my closest friends from college, is every third night we've been having a virtual cocktail hour. And as silly as it sounds, it's actually like, I think we all look forward to it. And, you know, it's a way to kind of normalize in some ways the situation. And we all come with a glass of more than water in hand. And it's been really, and it's a group of friends that, you know, we're very close, but we very rarely have the time to connect like that. And so it's been something nice to look forward to. And at least for me personally, that's been something that has helped me a lot.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I'm going to totally botch this, but there was a whole movement where they did brain scans of people, you know, in isolation who, you know, for the purposes of this experiment, weren't allowed to connect with other people, and really saw in the brain that this disconnection, this isolation acted like trauma, like brain trauma and poison, if you will, right? Not to be dramatic. Whereas obviously we know all the benefits of connection, that like, chemically there is a benefit to us physiologically and emotionally when we even just imagine connection, right? So even if people don't have access, or, you know, everybody's schedules don't align, things like that, just even kind of getting quiet and calling to mind the people who are important to you, calling to mind and picturing your friends in their house cooking, or picturing people working in the hospitals. It releases all of those chemicals that really keep us healthy and happy. So I think that's great.
One thing, in all honesty, and it's funny you say that, but I mean, one of the things that I've been doing a lot more of, I've always thought that I wanted to do more of it, and I never had the time, but connecting with my family abroad. So, connecting with them on a daily basis, checking up on them, and just, discussing the situation and laughing a little bit more. I think that has eased a lot of this for me.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think connection in general, and again, I think just even kind of imagining connection has the same benefit, right? It literally kind of changes our body and brain chemistry when we imagine connection. So yes, absolutely. Any way that you can literally connect with people through Zoom or FaceTime or texting, or even just stopping. There's a great meditation where you you picture yourself in a room, and then you broaden it to picturing everybody in your house, and then you get bigger and picture everybody, on your street, in your neighborhood, to your city, right? So that you can kind of start just imagining how we're really genuinely all in this together and all connected. And then we get oxytocin and serotonin, and it's great. I think the only thing I would add, if I were to kind of put out a quick method for dealing with the anxious thoughts, right? Because there's anxious behaviors, anxious body sensations, and then anxious thoughts, which are usually the most distressing for us. We do a very simple exercise called downward arrow. So when our thoughts become kind of catastrophic, right? Well, what if this happens, and what if this happens, and then what if this happens, and then, oh my gosh, everything's going to be terrible. My kids are going to be living in my basement forever, and I'm going to get coronavirus, right? It ends up very catastrophic. Because what the emotion mind doesn't recognize is, like, most of the time we can come to a place where we really truly could actually handle it if that happened, right? But when we're anxious, we're going, no, I don't want to think about it. I can't handle it. That would be bad. That would be terrible. I can't do it. So downward arrow it sounds a little bit sadistic, but it is where you actually just walk yourself through this catastrophic situation. And you keep asking yourself, okay, so what? So it might be, oh my gosh, what if I get sick, right? And then you go down and ask yourself, so what if I do, right? And then literally answer that question. Well, then everybody in my house is going to get sick. Okay, so then what, right? What would that mean? What would that look like? And allow your brain actually to walk through each step until the very end. And the very last question you ask yourself is, if you've now gotten to this point where you go, okay, well, everybody's going to be hospitalized and there's not going to be enough ventilators, and you go to that very last step, the last question you ask is, how would I cope with that, right? Because the answer that usually comes up for people is actually, we have a lot of coping skills, right? And it starts to bring up all of our values, all of the things that are important to us, all of the things that we are certain about, right? So usually it comes up with, you know what? I would still have my family. I would absolutely still love them. There's nothing in the world that could take that away. And I would do it. It would be horrible, and I would do it, right? Step by step, I'd reach out to people, to my people, right? I'd pray, or I'd meditate, or whatever it is. And yet anxiety, when we're spinning, it doesn't allow us to get to that point to say, that would be really bad, and I don't want that to happen. And at the same time, I could handle it, right? And all the things that are important to me would still be important to me. So that's the downward arrow.
So let me recap what I just heard for our audience. So first, the downward arrow, also known as the worst case scenario. that would be useful for people to try to exercise if they felt like they were spinning out of control, that they could actually start to cope with some of these things that could possibly happen and realize that they're not actually going to, it's not actually going to be as bad as they think it is, right? Correct?
Or it might be as bad as they think it is, but they could cope with it.
Gotcha. The first thing that we started out with was kind of trying to figure out what's in the range, or what's actually in the circle of influence that they can actually impact right now, right away, that's going to be beneficial, as opposed to the things that they really can't control. That was the first concept that we talked about, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, second concept was, and I just have notes here, but it's specifically around the body, just getting back in touch with the body, whether that's breathing, meditation, exercise, being mindful, being present, about how that impacts that, dinosaur brain part of ours, that amygdala. And then we also talked about some different things with our kids about the learning and different types of things. And what I got here was be flexible, because it's going to look different for different people in different situations. So you need to be able to flex. And if it sucks, we need to be able to cut ourselves a little slack with our kids.
Mm-hmm.
Did I do a good job of summarizing everything you talked about?
That's a good recap. I like it.
Good. All right. Well, thank you for doing this. I know
yeah, thanks for having me.
We have some extra time on our hands, and we thought this would be useful for our audience, and it's been very helpful for me, I know, personally. I don't know if the doctors feel the same way, but
Definitely.
Okay, perfect, good. So we'll put this out there, and how can people get in touch with you? I know you do this professionally, but I also heard that you are doing this before all this hit, remotely too, virtually for your patients, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How can people?
So should I say the website is probably the easiest way.
Yeah.
It's my name, Liza Reed, LMFT.com. And I'd be happy, without it being anything formal, if people want to reach out to me. All my information is on the website for resources, or there's some great worksheets of trying to decide whether something's in our range or not, trying to decide if it's probable or possible. So I'd be happy to send those out. Different apps.
Are they on your website?
They're not, but
Oh.
Anybody can email me and I'd be happy to send them.
Gotcha. What I'll do is I'm going to put this on YouTube, and I'll leave links below in the description on where to go so you get your website, and again, how to get in touch with you and maybe get those worksheets and those types of things.
Great. That sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Liza.
Thanks, Liza.
Thank you, guys.
Hi, guys.
Stay healthy.
All right.
Fuck Corona.
Yeah, fuck Corona.
I